On today's show, the New York Times best-selling author of 4 books and the former prosecuting attorney and the iconic television personality Nancy Grace joins us to share about her new book, Don't Be a Victim, Fighting Back Against America's Crime Wave, and why child abduction is a significantly higher risk to your children than COVID-19.
Some shows don't need a celebrity narrator to introduce the show, but this show does. 2 men, 8 kids, co-created by 2 different women, 13 multi-million-dollar businesses. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Thrive Time Show.
Now, 3, 2, 1, here we go!
Started from the bottom, now we here. Started from the bottom, and we'll show you how to get here. Started from the bottom, now we here. Started from the bottom, now we here. Started from the bottom, now we
Yes, and yes! Thrive Nation, it's a very special occasion because Nancy Grace is in this place. Nancy Grace, how are you, ma'am?
I'm great. Thank you for inviting me.
Hey, are you a cat person?
Well, actually, I didn't think I was a cat person, but then when I was a prosecutor, this stray cat kept coming up, and I asked everybody I knew, please take this cat. Nobody would take it. Finally, I took the cat. It belonged to 3 hookers that lived down the street where I was prosecuting and living. So I took the cat. I had the cat Coco for 18 years, and I became a cat person. We have a rescue dog, Fat Boy, a rescue cat, Cinnamon, and listen to this, 2 rescue guineas. Yes, there is such a thing.
Rescue
Abby,
guineas?
Chloe. Guinea pigs.
Really? Okay.
Let me tell you something. Now I know why people get rid of them.
Well, now that we've covered the deep controversial stuff,
The important stuff.
I want to ask you, you've had a ton of success in your career. I mean, you've had a massive amount of success. Where did you come from? I mean, what was life like growing up for you?
Wow, that's a really good question. First of all, when I look at my career, I don't think about success. I think about all the crime victims I represented in inner city Atlanta and far beyond now in crime fighting via the airwaves. But I grew up in middle rural Georgia. We were not even part of a town per se. There was nothing but soybean fields and pine trees as far as the eye could see. I could ride my bike after school until I could hear the chimes in the church steeple at my little Methodist church ringing. I know it was 6 o'clock. I need to go home.
Yeah.
And I did not know anything about hatred or violence in that world. We were poor. The bookmobile would come out to the needy children, but I had no idea. That was the first time I had air conditioning, was in the bookmobile. I went, wow.
Really?
This is awesome.
So you grew up in a kind of a carefree, you could ride your bike world, and now you're writing a book called Don't Be a Victim, Fighting Back Against America's Crime Wave. How has the world changed from how your carefree childhood to the world we now live in? You can compare or contrast that.
Wow. Well, that world ended for me when my fiance was murdered shortly before our wedding. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. True, we were lower middle class at best, but I didn't have a care in the world. I had no idea. Everybody else in my little public school was in the same boat as I was. So we had no idea. Everything changed when Keith was murdered. The world we live in now, it's so difficult for me to try to give my twins, John David and Lucy, the kind of upbringing that I had. Fighting, every time they turn on their iPads, they see something political. I don't let them watch TV. We stream certain things for them to watch because I have to fast forward or cut it off based on what they're hearing. COVID, the riots, not far from our door. A lot is happening, and it's very difficult to give them the kind of upbringing I want to, but I'm trying.
I have 5 kids, and so I process the same.
You are so blessed. I wanted 4,
Yeah.
but it didn't turn out that way. I'm lucky I got 2.
You know, and as parents, you know, we want the best for our kids, and we're in this fight together, and everybody processes what's going on differently. Some people, when bad things happen, they kind of want to hide and act like it's not happening. Some people want to make a fake account on Facebook and to post things they want to say under a fake name. I know a lot of people that are doing that. They seriously make fake accounts and post things they want to say. Some people, everyone's reacting differently, but you wrote this book, Don't Be a Victim, Fighting Back Against America's Crime Wave. Let's talk about chapter 1. If I were to open that book, it says
Got it
your
right
child's safe. Talk to me about chapter 1, about the schools and your children. Just tell us about this first chapter.
Well, you asked me why I wrote the book, and I'll tell you why. As a prosecutor, first I wallowed in helplessness and misery after Keith's murder. Wallowed. I just couldn't see my way out. I dropped out of school. I lost down to 89 pounds.
Wow.
Couldn't eat. It was awful. I finally went back to school with the goal of becoming a felony prosecutor to help other crime victims like myself. And with each jury trial, even though it was just one defendant, I knew I had done a good thing. I got that guy off the street for that minute. I had done something.
Yeah.
And it felt really good. As a TV crime fighter, I don't get that immediate gratification. And I watch case after case after case unfolding, and it just makes me sick. I had to do something. I don't like just talking about it. I like doing something about it. And that's why I wrote this. It started off, believe it or not, about being self-protection.
Yeah.
But somehow it started with my children. This one is safe at school. Did you know over 30% of child abductions and attempted abductions center around school, the bus route, the walk to school, the bike path, all of that? I mean, think about it. Look back, J.C. Duger, Ben Ownby. It goes on and on. Something about the trip to school. Kyron Horman at school. School shooting. Teachers.
I'm going to ask you something.
It goes on and on.
I'm going to ask you something, and then if you just say, Clay, I don't want to go there, it's fine. And through the power of editing, I have the ability to make it go away. So I'm just going to bring it up. This whole Epstein madness. This Epstein. I mean, you hate to hear the name Epstein. I didn't even know what the name Epstein was years ago. And you hear Epstein. Now we all know the most prolific pedophile in American history. Terrible guy. Then we start hearing about, Bill Clinton hanging out with Epstein. And I was just thinking this week, I go, I'm going to draw a circle of my friends on a piece of paper. How many of my friends are prolific pedophiles? Oh, 0. So if you have Bill Gates and Bill Clinton hanging out with this Epstein guy, how do you process men that hang out with prolific pedophiles? How do you process that?
Well, there's too many ways to look at that. If I were prosecuting the case, I would not have a case against Clinton. There's that photo of him getting a back rub, which doesn't look good.
Yeah.
But the Epstein victim herself said Clinton was nothing but a gentleman. So there's no case there.
No case.
There are pictures of Epstein with a lot of powerful people, including Gates, who was meeting him about a charity. And listen, I'm not a Democrat and I'm not a Republican. I'm an American. And I call it like I see it. So, yeah, it looks bad and it makes me question Clinton's wisdom. But that aside, it ain't a crime. Give me a crime. Let me work on that.
Would you hang out?
This book is full of them.
And do you personally think it's a good choice for the listeners? There's some listeners out there making choices. Is it a good idea to hang out with pedophiles? Is that a good tip? I mean, I just wanted to bring that.
Well, as my grandmother always said, lay down with a dog, wake up with a flea. So no, obviously not. And when I think of dirty money,
yeah,
there you go. That you will take money from someone that is dirty. That makes the money dirty. That makes you dirty when you take that dirty money. But I really think all politicians do it. And that's why I hate politics. One of the many, many reasons.
And can you hold up your book cover one more time there?
Oh, yeah, sure. And
how would you describe what you do? How would you describe what you do? Would you consider yourself a personality? Would you consider yourself an author? What do you call yourself?
A crime fighter.
Crime fighter. Look at you on that cover of that book.
Victim.
You look tough on that cover there. Scary.
Thank you.
I'm scared.
And
I wouldn't mess with you.
A crime victim.
Yeah.
And what I did was I started the book talking about personal safety. For instance, like Karina Vetrano, the Long Island jogger. I've gotten very close with her dad and the mom. And then, of course, Molly Tibbetts, who was jogging and was murdered. That's actually where I started the book. But somehow I got so into protecting children. It goes from nannies from hell, daycare. That took me a lot of research to do the daycare.
Yeah.
It's very involved. Shopping malls, playgrounds, parks, all sorts of ways that children can be lured and killed, cyber threats. And every one of these chapters is based on a case that I personally prosecuted,
Wow.
investigated, or covered. I interviewed so many people for this book and went back into my own archives of cases I prosecuted and investigated to put this together. Because in a world where everything is upside down and there's nothing we can rely on, everything's changing, and not in a good way, I think this empowers people to stay safe and protect your family.
Why is COVID-19 being reported every day? I mean, think about this. Every single day we have an update about the number of cases, even though we now know, according to Dr. Scott Atlas, the medical doctor from Stanford, who's now advising the coronavirus task force, we now know that COVID-19 is less dangerous for children than the common flu. But yet we just keep hearing relentless updates about the number of COVID-19 cases. I mean, it's just ad nauseum. It's constant. Why do we not cover child abduction the way? Why does the media not cover child abduction the way they cover COVID-19?
Because those children are not part of a political fight. The other day, I covered a case and spoke to the mother and father of a little 5-year-old boy, Cannon Hennett, that was shot point blank range on his tricycle as he veered into a neighbor's yard. Execution style, no reason. 5 years old, beautiful little boy. Why did that not hit every headline? I'll tell you why. Because it has nothing to do with politics and nothing to do with COVID, but it has to do with our children, my children, your children. And that is what this book is about, protecting them and yourself. And I go all the way to seniors. After my dad passed away, my mom moved in with us, and she got scammed by some fake orphanage, taking her money, and she'd, of course, write a check.
Wow.
And that just threw me over the edge. And I started at the end, I end with crimes on seniors. It goes from children to you, to families, to safe in your car, safe at the mall, safe in the parking lot, all the way to seniors, how they get scammed and mistreated. You know, you kind of reminded me of my husband, because I'm always like, COVID, the children. And he's always like, look at the stats, Nancy. Look at the stats. Look at the death rate versus the infection rate.
Yeah.
Try not to read all the news, because the news is there to get a headline and to scare you and give you some information. So you got to take every article with a box of salt.
Well, here's what I would point out, and this is a commercial for your book that you didn't ask for, but here we go. I mean this. The Dr. Dan Erickson, he's from California, and Dr. Atlas, Dr. Scott Atlas from Stanford, also from California. These are two men now that have worked their way to the White House. Dr. Atlas recently held a press conference, and at the press conference, he said these remarkable words, but he said it too calmly, I think. I think if he would have said it more radically, people would have woken up maybe. But he says, COVID-19 is less dangerous than the common flu for kids. And he just kind of let it sit there. And I thought everyone would go, yes, woo, we're done. But that didn't happen. But I really do believe this. I believe child abduction is more dangerous for our kids than COVID-19, because the death rate, according to Dr. Erickson now, is 0.02% of the whole population. But less than 1 out of 1 million kids that gets COVID is going to die. Less than 1 out of 1 million. That's from doctors. I would like to ask, because I believe that your book is more important than the COVID. People are more at risk. Their kids are more at risk of abduction than they are at risk of dying of COVID. I know that is statistically true. In fact, I know that according to the FBI, in 2019, there were 421,394 entries for missing children, according to the FBI. Unbelievable.
Yes. Every year, thousands of children are abducted. A child is abducted about every 30 seconds.
Every 30 seconds.
Now, hold on. Many of those are parental abductions.
Okay.
Okay. You have a custody fight.
Yeah.
One parent grabs the kid and takes off from school. And it's a big, big sticky mess, but it gets resolved and the child is fine.
Okay.
However, there are the other abductions. And you're right. More children are being abducted than are dying of COVID. That is true. However, let me tell you one more thing about COVID.
Yep.
I had already finished the book and handed it into the printing press when COVID hit. And I stood by. I was in New York, actually, launching the Fox Nation program, Crime Stories. And I was waiting in a green room. And I looked at the bottom of the TV and it went, "Pandemic hits New York." I'm like, what? Okay. I grabbed my little beat up suitcase and I literally ran down the halls to get in the car and get to LaGuardia. No face mask, no nothing. I just had to get home. I got home. Long story short, I watched it being reported and it wasn't in the book. So I wrote a free 30-page chapter, which is at crimeonline.com. And I believe Dr. Oz has it up still. And it talks about coronavirus crimes. Don't be a victim. So everyone could get that knowledge immediately about all the scams that are taking place, attacking people during this time of COVID.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. I want to repeat that statement nice and slow so people can grasp this idea. Child abduction is more dangerous for your children than COVID-19. That's a fact. And someone should look that up. Someone should not trust me. Look that up.
That is a fact. Of your child dying of COVID.
Yeah.
Yes, because I really think the stats are, of course, not accurate, and they can't be accurate on COVID. Yeah. There's no way they can be accurate. But there are many, many, many more infections than are being reported. Yeah. But the death rate, I believe, is fairly accurate at this point. I mean, so there are a lot more infections as the death toll is lowering. Now, that is a fact.
That's a fact. Now, the FBI, you see the FBI just the other day. Folks, you guys can Google this right now, but if you type in FBI investigates 5,000, just type in FBI investigates 5,000, hit enter in Google, you'll find it. Ray, the director of the FBI, is investigating 5,000 people for failing to disclose their connections to the communists. It seems like the FBI is always investigating these child traffickers and communists and all this, but it seems like there's very few arrests. And I could be wrong. I don't know. I'm not a prosecutor. I'm a dad who owns a business, and somehow I'm made some weird life choices, and we're on this podcast together. But I'm just saying, how come the FBI doesn't seem to be able to arrest these people? These horrible child traffickers. What's going on?
Very often the arrests and the prosecutions, once the first news story hits about the crime itself, we don't hear about the resolution. But also child traffickers, sex traffickers are very, very wily. And for the FBI to be involved, there has to be certain criteria met. For instance, like a kidnapping goes across state lines. And that is why you see Epstein, his case was investigated by the FBI, by the feds. Why? Because he was actually trafficking young girls as young as 13 and 14 from one state out to his ranch, out to on the Lolita Express to Orgy Island, to his brownstone in New York, from Florida. So crossing the state lines made that federal jurisdiction. Very often we don't hear about the resolution. And also, I don't see a big success rate. You're right.
It's very unfortunate. Your book is about empowerment. It's about empowerment. That's what your book is about. If I were to open your book to chapter 13, that chapter is called Crimes at Concerts and Live Events. Walk us into that. Just kind of give us a little sneak peek into chapter 13 and maybe what we can expect to learn in that chapter.
I just want to tell you one thing and follow up on what you said.
Yeah.
I remember my first child sex trafficking prosecution. I remember the little girl. I couldn't find her. Back then, we just called it statutory rape. I didn't understand there was a much bigger thing going on in child sex trafficking. This was just a little girl that went to school and she met up with these two guys. She went on a date and she ended up being sex trafficked. I was working with 3 cops, vice cops. We were out on the street. I was at a flop house. They said, "We found her." Well, I zoomed right over there. I went in the room. I came out and said, "There's not a girl in there." I go, "Yes, she is. She's the one in the white boots." I went back in. This little 13-year-old girl looked like she was 35 years old. She had on a mini skirt, tons of makeup, eyelashes, the hair, the high boots. I went, holy crap. It was her.
Wow.
Got a prosecution. Oh, I got a mistrial in the opening statement because I called the defendants pimps and they were not charged with that. Fine. I took it back to the grand jury and got a charge included of pimpery, and then redid my closing argument with the second jury, my opening statement with the second jury, got a conviction. We called it statutory rape then, but now it's sex trafficking and much, much worse. Concerts. There is a plethora of crimes going on at big events, whether they're parties, whether they're raves, whether it's a concert. And this deals with what you need to do when you go to such an event. I remember covering a case, beautiful young girl, last name Bruckner, and she went to a Halloween rave. There were about 700 people there because it went on Facebook, right?
Yep.
She was dressed as Poison Ivy. So when she was abducted, raped, and murdered, nobody could even give a description. She did not have her cell phone with her. She did not meet up with friends, nothing. So I go through where you need to sit, what you need to do before, during, and after so you can be safe. Events like basketball games, whenever they happen again, concerts, parties, you name it, big gatherings where things seem to go wrong.
You, could you explain to listeners out there your educational background?
Oh, sure. Yes. I started off at a kindergarten that was in a barn. Miss Julia, her husband turned the barn into a kindergarten.
That's why you're so smart.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Resourceful.
Right. That explains the whole thing.
That explains the whole deal.
I ended up going to a little college called Valdosta State, where I met my fiance, Keith, transferred to Mercer. Keith was murdered. I went to Mercer Law School and graduated law review. After undergrad and law school, I then went to NYU to get a master's in constitutional law and criminal law. That was supposed to be an 18-month program, but I was working full-time, so it took me 3 years. So I got my undergrad in Shakespearean studies, a law degree, and then another degree in criminal and constitutional law.
Okay, so I want to ask you this question. I feel like you're uniquely qualified to answer this question, but I wanted the listeners to know your background. Constitutionally speaking, do you believe that people should be mandated to take vaccines? The reason why I ask this is because we know the death rate of COVID, according to Dr. Dan Erickson, is 0.02%. We know, according to Dr. Scott Atlas, that the COVID virus is less dangerous than the common flu for children, but yet you're seeing these draconian responses to COVID-19, lockdowns, shuttering of schools, closing churches, mandating masks. Now there's talk of mandating a vaccine. Constitutionally speaking, what are your thoughts on that?
As it relates to COVID, I do not think there is going to be mandatory vaccinations. Too many people don't want them. If that were the case, there would already be mandatory vaccinations for so many other things, and there are not. There are the anti-vaxxers that don't want the children vaccinated for mumps or measles, and they have a leg to stand on. So I don't think there's going to be a universal mandate of a COVID vaccination.
Okay, now because you're such a fun person, and yet the subject is so tough, I have to ask you some fun questions just for my psychological well-being. Favorite old school jam? Think back when you were like in college, high school, whenever you were really, what was like your favorite old school jam? It could be any genre, any artist, or maybe you have a favorite artist. What's your favorite old school music jam?
I just want to see you laughing in the purple rain.
Purple rain, purple rain. That's awesome. You love Purple Rain?
I love Prince.
Really?
Although I've got to say that Ruth Brown, Patsy Cline, Nina Simone are my faves. Every morning I wake the children up to Gordon McRae. Oh, What a Beautiful Morning, followed by Glenn Campbell, Wichita Lineman, and Sonny and Cher, The Beat Goes On.
Really?
They're miserable. They can't wait to get to school by the time I play all that.
Nancy Grace loves the purple rain, a purple. That's awesome. I love that you love that. That's great. My partner owns a bank, and it's called Regent Bank. And I always, on the radio show, I do commercials that he doesn't want to the melody of Purple Rain. And I sing and I say, Regent Bank, and because they chose not to buy ads for our own show. So I do reverse commercials that they don't want.
Shame for Prince to pass away.
Yeah.
A shame.
Yeah.
Which leads me into drug overdose. So that's a whole nother can of worms.
Agreed. Let's talk about the unique relationship between child abduction, prostitution. How does that happen? You hear these girls that get abducted, 12 years old, 13 years old, 14, whatever it is, and you keep hearing somehow there's a connection to prostitution and drugs. And how does that work? I don't really want to know, but I have to ask you.
Well, the example that I just gave you was a 13-year-old girl that thought she was having a date with an older guy, and it turned out he raped her, beat her, and pimped her out. I have worked extensively with a woman that's in this book, Alicia Kovac. Gorgeous. She's got a really long last name, so now she goes by Kovac. And she had met somebody online. She thought it was a little girl her age, 14.
Yeah.
Turned out it was a grown man. And she stepped outside literally between dinner and dessert at a family dinner around Christmas time to meet the friend. The friend kidnapped her, put her in the back of the car, put her in a choke collar, chained her to the floor, raped and sodomized her for weeks on end. Finally, when he sent a picture, a live video and picture to another pedophile he knew online, the other pedophile knew how wrong it was and called the FBI. The FBI, this time, managed to break in and save her. As it turned out, that night, the perpetrator, Scott Tyree, had planned to kill her to get rid of the evidence. That's how it happens. I remember prosecuting a little boy. He was 9. He was, I now know, to be autistic, but what he could do is play video games. All right. So mom would take him to the arcade by the laundry, give him a roll of quarters. He started being molested by what many people consider to be an attractive young guy with a job and the works, who would give him a roll of quarters to be sodomized. The little boy couldn't speak. That's how it happens. The victim gets groomed. They think they have a friend. They trust the friend. Then they get kidnapped and put into sex slavery, and they can't get away. They're too young to understand how to get out of it.
Can we meet your cat?
Well, she's wandering. This is a new cat.
This is
Coco. This is Cinnamon. My daughter went through a cat phase.
Okay.
Where I'd sneak up to see what she was looking at online because I thought it might be a perv. It would be cat videos, not judging. I love Lucy more than my own life. We had to have a cat. Sadly, after we got the cat, she went into a guinea pig phase. Now we have Abby and Chloe, who do nothing but eat and poop all day.
Well, your cat's kind of sneaking around in the background there, and I just wanted to. There he is. Yeah. And what's this cat's name again? This is Cinnamon.
This one is Cinnamon. She's a pound.
I gotta meet this cat. I gotta have a positive. You are, the stuff you're telling me is this uncomfortable truth that I don't want to talk about, but we need to talk about it. So I need to look at your cat, and maybe that'll help me.
Do you want me to get the cat? Hold on, let me try to catch her.
See if you. It'd be super great if I could meet your cat. I would.
Yeah, I've got such a professional setup here. Hold on.
We have over a dozen cats, my wife and I. I think we have 13 cats.
You have a dozen cats?
I'm not kidding. We have acres, and we have land, and we have cats, and we have chickens. Oh, there we go. Here comes the cat. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Okay, here we go. I see the cat.
She is a love bug.
Oh, wow. Look at the cat. Oh, wow. Look at the cat. I love cats.
Isn't she beautiful?
She's a great American. Look at that cat. I bet you
Cinnamon.
Wow. Okay. Freedom-loving cat right there.
I guess I did become a cat person.
Well, thank you so much for bringing Cinnamon on the show. And I want to encourage all the listeners out there to pick up a copy of your book. How do you want them to do it? Is there a website you want us to go to? Do you want us to go to Amazon?
Yeah.
What's the best way to help you advance your cause?
You can. And by the way, my proceeds going to National Center for Missing and Exploited Children.
Got it.
I've been doing that since I first started writing books, did Dancing with the Stars to try to help them.
Yeah.
So I'm putting you down. Yes, you can go to Amazon. And you can go to crimeonline.com. Of course, Hachette, the book publisher. Easiest way, Amazon. And I'm really grateful to you. And I'm really grateful for everyone considering Don't Be a Victim. It took me 2 years of research and working and talking to so many, many crime victims to put this together for you. And I pray to God it makes a difference in your life.
Nancy, thank you so much for being here on the Thrive Time Show. You have a backup career as a model. You could be a model if your whole pundit lawyer thing doesn't work out. You're the best. I appreciate you. I really do. You're the best.
That's so funny that you said that, and I really appreciate it. The other day, I went on Twitter to answer some people's questions, and a lot of people send me story ideas and cases they want resolved.
Yeah.
One guy said, "Why are you on TV? You're ugly."
Get out of here. You're the best. I appreciate you.
My daughter came home from school that day. She's going, "Mom, what about my hair?" I said, "Honey, you're so beautiful. If you think you have a problem if somebody ever makes fun of you, look at this." And we both just died laughing. "Why are you on TV? You're ugly."
Well, you are the best. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks. Thank you so much.
And now, without any further ado, 3, 2,